Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Monday everybody. I trust you had a restful weekend and as always have a productive week ahead. We start as we usually do with the economy, but first we briefly note that China's Premier Li Qiang is attending the 2024 World Economic Forum in Davos this week, while paying an official visit to the host country too. He is scheduled to speak tomorrow, Tuesday. The PRC Foreign Ministry announced the news over the weekend, with a spokesperson expressing, quote, "We look to increase exchanges and communication and enhance mutual understanding and trust with other parties to the forum to contribute our part to better global economic recovery and governance and joint response to challenges." End quote. Li will also make an official visit to Ireland while he is in Europe. This year will see roughly 2,800 people from 120 countries attending the forum, still below the over 3,000 which attended in July 2020, pre-pandemic. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will both be there this year too. Okay. Now for the economic updates. Over the weekend, new customs data showed that in 2023, China's exports saw their first full-year decline since 2016. The country sold $3.38 trillion worth of goods to the rest of the world in the year, a 4.6% year-on-year drop. Full-year imports fell 5.5%, leaving a surplus of $823 billion for the year. Part of the reason for the decline was a high comparison versus 2022. During the pandemic, we remember Chinese exports surged, but this is not the whole story. Demand from Europe, the US, and other places have also faded as interest rates have increased. Geopolitical factors are relevant too. This poor export performance, combined with an ongoing housing crisis and deflationary fears, continue to put pressure on policymakers for greater stimulus. Meanwhile, there was more disappointing news too. According to data published by the People's Bank of China, China's central bank, over the weekend, loans in China's currency expanded 10.4% in December, the slowest pace on record, in records going back to 2003. 2023 saw persistently weak credit demand from households and businesses. China's M1 money supply measure expanded 1.3%, with the month before being the slowest in nearly 2 years. Soft domestic demand has made many companies reluctant to expand. Ongoing deflation and customer and producer prices are also eroding credit. Consumer prices in December recorded the longest streak of deflation since 2009, the global financial crisis, and banks are wary of lending to developers as many have defaulted. Though some commentators argue that the central bank may be trying to reduce the growth of loans between financial institutions. Whatever the explanation, the data are not optimistic. Quote, aggregate financing in December increased by 1.94 trillion RMB, which was below most market expectations of roughly 2.4 to 2.5 trillion. This was in spite of government attempts to expand credit into manufacturing and infrastructure. For all of 2023, aggregate finance was up 9.9%, or 34 trillion RMB. This is the second biggest annual nominal increase since the awful year of 2020, when the total increase was just over 2% higher. If we assume that GDP for the year will be around 126 trillion RMB, this implies that total debt grew nominally by an amount equal to 27% of GDP in order to deliver nominal GDP growth of roughly 4 to 5%. Using aggregate finance as a proxy for total debt, China's debt to GDP ratio will have grown from 284% at the end of 2022 to 299% at the end of 2023. That's a huge increase, and it would be risky to repeat it again this year. End quote. Next up, we have one more economic update to cover, but just quickly, if you are enjoying today's video or getting some value from it, I have a huge favor to ask, and that is to like and subscribe. This is only 2 clicks of the mouse, but it is a huge help for me, and it's the best way, along with sharing the video of course, to help the channel grow. It is just me making these videos every day, so I rely on all of you to help me grow the channel and have it shown to new people. With your help, we should reach 60,000 subscribers this week, which would be awesome. And for those who want to help keep the channel financially sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. The channel relies primarily on subscribers to keep going. As always, thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Let's continue. In a speech at a forum in Shanghai over the weekend, Sheng Songcheng, a former director of the People's Bank of China's Statistics and Analysis Department, warned that China's property downturn may continue for another 2 years. At the event, Sheng stated that new home sales nationwide will likely shrink by another 50 million square meters both this year and next year, with 2025's annual total plateauing at around 850 million square meters. This warning comes after we recently learned that the value of new home sales among the biggest 100 real estate companies in China fell 34.6% in December year-on-year, accelerating from a 29.6% decline in November, putting major developers' full-year sales down 16.5% versus 2022. Quote, "The country's unprecedented housing slump has cost the economy a key growth engine in the past 3 years and heightened financial risk following a record wave of defaults by developers." End quote. Next up, and finally for today, this is a story I wanted to cover over the weekend, but we ran out of time, so let's go through it now. Last week saw the US-led attacks on Houthi positions in southwestern Yemen. As a major economy deeply dependent on international trade, especially through this region, why hasn't Beijing been more supportive of these actions? This is a question worth exploring. Quote, "One would think the PRC would not want global shipping disrupted given its dependence on global trade, but so far they have refrained from doing anything substantive to restrain the Houthis or, as far as we can see publicly, pressure Iran to restrain the Houthis. Instead, the PRC recently abstained from a UN Security Council resolution on the Red Sea crisis, with one of the reasons given that it failed to explicitly call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. What is the play here? If the US attacks fail, then the US looks like a paper tiger in the Middle East. If they do succeed, then shipping is restored, but the PRC can still say the US was to blame for the problem in the first place because it did not push for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. If these attacks spread into a broader Middle East conflict, how does that work for the PRC?" End quote. State-run Global Times last week reported that China's abstention from the UN Security Council resolution over the Red Sea crisis was over concerns of, quote, "fueling tensions," end quote. Liu Zhongmin, a professor at the Middle East Studies Institute of Shanghai International Studies University, speaking to the outlet, said that, quote, "A major flaw of the resolution lay in the fact that it treated the Red Sea crisis as a separate issue, while it was obviously a spillover of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Targeting Houthi militia without substantive efforts to de-escalate the Gaza war is like putting the cart before the horse." End quote. Another reason may be because Beijing believes that the Houthis may be less inclined to attack Chinese vessels passing through the strait, and it wants to keep it that way. Indeed, US outlet Bloomberg reports that at least 5 vessels transiting the Red Sea are using their signals to say that they have links to China. Quote, "The latest unusual measure taken to try and avoid attack by Houthi militants in the Red Sea. Each of the ships is signaling all Chinese crew," or something similar, in a field that would normally contain its destination. End quote. On Sunday, yesterday, at a joint press conference after meeting with the Egyptian foreign minister, China's foreign minister and top diplomat Wang Yi expressed, quote, "grave concern over the rising tensions in the Red Sea, while calling for an end to the harassment of civilian vessels," end quote, according to state media, which added, quote, "He called for an end to the harassment of commercial ships in the Red Sea, an important international trade route for goods and energy, while stressing the need to safeguard unimpeded global production and supply chains, as well as international as well as the international trade order." End quote. To understand the nature of the debate within Beijing over the regional and geopolitical considerations around all of this, I wanted to end by examining a recent piece by Shu Meng of the Middle East Studies Institute of Shanghai International Studies University, called "Israeli-Palestinian Conflict Evolves into Bloc Confrontation." Indeed, this piece is very telling. We are now quoting selected excerpts from it directly. "The Red Sea region has become the most prominent spillover area of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. As the conflict progresses, the confrontation between Israel and Hamas is transforming into conflicts between two blocs, and the Red Sea region has become an important battlefield between the US and Israel camp and the resistance camp led by Iran. In the recent series of international incidents, the region has seen contradictions between the two sides further deepening and tensions and militarization tendency aggravating. In the coming period of time, the haze of the standoff between the two major factions will primarily loom over the Red Sea region, while the linkage between regional security and the Israeli-Palestinian issue will become more pronounced, and the Israeli-Palestinian contradictions will continue to be a key factor for additional conflicts and disputes in the region. Repressing violence with force will only prove counterproductive for the permanent settlement of the Red Sea crisis. In response to Houthi attacks in the Red Sea region, the US formed a multinational maritime coalition to carry out the Operation Prosperity Guardian escorts. However, this operation failed to effectively deter Houthi, and the forces can still attack passing ships by breaching the escort security measures of the US. The framing of the next part is especially interesting. This has led to concerns about the safety of the shipping routes of the sea among vessel owners unrelated to Israel, further uplifting shipping costs, aggravating the contradictions and exacerbating the already tense atmosphere in the region. Furthermore, the convoy coalition formed by the US faces legitimacy deficits due to the absence of engagement from Middle Eastern countries. The political process in Yemen will become increasingly difficult to advance once accidental conflicts are sparked in the region. Here ends the direct quote and today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Monday, have a productive week, and I will see you all tomorrow.